Welcome to today's office hours presentation on Monday, March the 3rd, 2014. Every week we do the office hours presentation. It is a relaxed, informal, free mentoring program that we do every Monday at noon Pacific time, and this recording will be available for 1 week, along with some of the tagged previous week's recordings, and then all of the recordings for our office hours presentations will be available in my library. And this is number 25, so for the last 25 weeks I've given a presentation on a different subject every week, and I expect that to continue for some period of time. I've been around the block a few times, and I can talk on a lot of different subjects for at least 20 or 30 minutes, that's for sure. But the reasons I do this is because being a successful small business owner can be a great experience, but it is tough. You really do need the training and the guidance from people who've been around the block a few times. And I want you to get to know me, because when you do get to know me, you'll know that I care, that I'm not only experienced and know a lot about a lot of stuff, but you'll know that I really do care about you and I want you to succeed. Our agenda for the office hours presentations is that we do an in-depth discussion of a business success principle. I offer a few closing remarks, some special offers, and an invitation to next week's session, and then we go into open questions and answers. First, I like to get questions and some discussion around the subject of today, and then we open it up to just talk about anything. And today's topic is on the art and science of writing business plans. For those of you that know me, you know that I have written a lot of business plans, like 70 or 80 business plans. I've kind of lost count over the last 13 years as a business consultant. So that's 5 or so a year, which is about right. One every month, one every 2 months. In my busy times, I write one every month. In not so busy times, it's once every 2 or 3 months that I help somebody else writing a business plan. I always try to relate the subject of the day back to the key performance areas of business, and this one is square in the area of leadership. In the 7 key performance areas, leadership is number 1. That's why we put it at the bottom of this pyramid, this upside-down pyramid, because if your leadership isn't strong, if your foundation in leadership is not strong, the whole thing will collapse on you. And writing a business plan really facilitates communicating, which is one of the aspects of leadership, of thinking through the business model, which is another huge business success principle, and on taking responsibility for your business. So this is square in the key performance area of leadership. Today's agenda is we're going to talk about the many purposes of a business plan, the different types of business plans that there are, the common sections that you find in a business plan, and then some tips about creating your own business plan. First, let's talk about the purpose of a business plan. The purpose of the business plan, the primary purpose of a business plan is to communicate the status and the plans, the strategies of the business to your potential funders and to your potential teammates. So your potential funders could be investors. It could be other founders that may join you and bring in their time and money. It could be bankers or other lenders who may want to know about your opportunity before they commit to or even have a discussion with you about the possibility of loaning you money so that you can grow your business. So the primary purpose of a business plan is to communicate the status and the plans of the business to those who might support you in executing those plans. But it also facilitates the thinking it through. When you create a business plan, as we'll see here in just a minute, there's a lot of things that need to go into your business plan. So even if you're not going to the outside world for funding or to get additional teammate, writing a business plan can be a wonderful way of thinking through all of the things that you need to think about in order to create a great business model and in order to create a very strong and successful business. The third purpose is not nearly so obvious, and that third purpose that I see in a business plan is to demonstrate competence. Whenever you take your business plan and send it to somebody electronically or hand them a printed out copy of your business plan, in essence what you're saying to that person is, this is what competence looks like to me. This is what quality looks like to me. And people will judge you and judge the strength of your business based upon the quality of the business plan that you hand to them. So whenever you create a business plan, know that that is an expression of your overall competence and know that that is an expression of your overall quality. And when you hand it to somebody, be prepared that that's as important of a reflection on you and your quality and your competence as anything that you could possibly do, anything that you can hand, anything that you can say. So I always encourage somebody to say, if you're going to do a business plan, then do it right. Don't be satisfied with a draft of a plan that has typos, that's not well formatted, that's just not well presented, because it will not present a good image for you. It will not present you well in the way that you want to present it. There are many types of business plans. I think the four major types are business overviews, business summaries, a regular business plan, and then a strategic plan. And as it turns out, a strategic plan to me is really not a business plan, because I use the term business plan to mean a document that is an expression of how the entrepreneur intends to grow the business, make money, and in some cases give a return to their investors. It is, to me, a physical document with the sections that I'll describe here in a minute. A strategic plan is much different. A strategic plan is the project plan by which you intend to grow your business. And I did an office hours presentation, I don't think it was number 5 or 6 or something like that, where we talked about the different types of strategic plans. You can have a strategic plan, which is the project plan, the step-by-step plan by which you want to grow your business, that is not a quality document that you would hand to somebody else. It can be informal, more informal than a business plan. But the other three types that you see here, the business overviews, the business summaries, and the formal business plan, all facilitate the thinking it through and will demonstrate your competence to other people that you may want to get support from as you grow your business. And as it turns out, there are different types of business plans depending upon who you want to hand it to. There is a seed capital plan, which have a tendency to be shorter plans than formal plans. A bank or a lender plan, which can also be very, very small. Banks, by the way, are really interested in your historical performance. They're interested about 20 or 30% in what you're going to do tomorrow to make more money tomorrow, but they generally judge your ability to repay a bank loan based upon your history. So they're more interested in how much money did you make over the last 3 years or so, what were your revenues, what were your profits, and what is your ability to repay a loan than they are in your future projections. However, angel investors and venture capital folks are really very interested in what your projections are, because they want to know how big of a company that you intend to grow, how you intend to do that, what are your plans to do that, how much money they can possibly make from the investment that they're considering in your business. So not only are there different sizes of plans, business overviews can be from 1 page to 2 or 3 or 4 pages, and I've seen some a little bit longer than that. But there can be different audiences for those plans, and the different audience for the plan really will determine what you stress during the development of the plan and the expression of the plan. But whatever you do, there are a lot of things that you need to do when it comes to thinking it through before you put all those words and numbers on paper. There are many plans behind the plan. Before you can create a quality business plan, you need to have a marketing plan. What markets are you going to reach and how are you going to reach them? An operations plan. How are you going to conduct the day-to-day operations of your business? A manufacturing plan. How are you going to create your products and services? A staffing plan. Who's going to deliver those products and services, and who's going to manage the back office of your company? A product development plan, like a product development roadmap that describes what products you're going to create and the sequence in which you create them. A customer service plan. How are you going to deliver your services, or if it's your service-based company, to your clients, or how are you going to support the customers that buy your products if you're a product-based company. And a sales plan. How are you going to sell your products? What are your routes to market? How are you going to build a sales team and how to compensate those teams? And a funding plan. What is your capital strategy? Where are you going to get the money necessary to grow your business? And a financial plan that says, here's the money that we intend to create. Here are our financial projections. And an exit strategy, which means when do you intend to exit the business? And more importantly for the investors, of course, is how do they get their money back out? So there's 2 different types of exit strategies, by the way. There's an exit strategy for you personally, which may be that you intend to stay in the business for the foreseeable future. But there's also the exit strategy for your investor about how they can exit from the business and how they can get their principal back and how they can get a return on their investment. That's what's most important to them. In truth, you have to be thinking through all of the different functional areas of business. You need to understand how you're going to perform in each one of these areas. How are you going to lead the company? How are you going to do sales? How are you going to do marketing? How are you going to do service and deliver your products and services? What products are you going to develop and how? How are you going to run the back office, the operations and administration aspects of your business? And how are you going to manage the business from a financial point of view? The plan is a reflection of the work that you put in each one of these key performance areas of business. In most business plans that are for angel investors and for venture capital folks, there are 8 common sections to a business plan that I'm going to talk about just at a very high level in each one of them. There's the executive summary, the business opportunity, the solutions that you're going to provide, your company and your team, the progress that you've had so far, your growth strategies, your financial projections, and then anything in the appendices. So let's take just a few minutes, and we'll take about a minute on each one of these, and we'll talk about what's commonly in each one of these sections in the business plan. First, the executive summary. The executive summary is typically 1 to 2 pages, although every once in a while I get a request from a client that wants one that's 3 or 4 pages. Most of the ones that I create are 1 or 2 pages long. It's a very quick read. It usually can stand alone, be a standalone document you can hand to somebody. And for me personally, it's the last thing that you write. It is a true summary of the contents of the rest of the business plan. If you just have a business overview, if you just have a 1 or a 2-page document and you don't have a complete business plan that backs that up, I encourage you to call that a business overview and not an executive summary. Because if you hand somebody an executive summary as a standalone document, the odds are pretty good that they're going to ask for the rest of the document if they like what they see. And if you don't have that document, they'll be a little bit disappointed. So my encouragement to you is that you just call the executive summary an executive summary, that the executive summary really is a true summary of the contents of the rest of the plan. Usually in the plan, the next section that I put in there is the opportunity, which talks about the industry and the market, your specific market segments that you intend to address with your business, the trends that you see in the marketplace, and the major players that you may see, and any major problems that you may see as well. This is where you convince your investor or the rest of your team that you really do understand the industry in which you intend to operate. You understand the trends of the business. Is it growing or is it shrinking? And the major players. Ideally, you would be putting a business up in an industry that was rapidly growing, that was very stable, and I really like businesses that go into fragmented marketplaces as opposed to ones that are dominated by 1 or 2 key players, because a fragmented marketplace, I think, has more opportunities for you to grab significant market share than does a business or an industry in which there are 1 or 2 major players, because they can be awesome competition for you. So in this section of the business plan, you demonstrate your awareness of the challenges that are in front of you, of what the industries are that you are playing in, and who the major players are, etc., and the major problems, which generally you talk about first in the solutions section of the business plan. You want to talk about the problem that you are solving, the opportunity that you see in the marketplace to address a challenge with your products and services. This is where you talk a little bit about your competitive positioning, your value propositions, or the ways in which you want to communicate to your customers the way in which you can help them achieve their goals, and your ideal customer profile. So here in the solutions sections of the plan is the place where we tell people what it is that we're going to sell, who we're going to sell it to, and why they're going to buy it from us. In the next section of the plan, we talk about the team that we have in place, the background and history of the team, of the executives especially, the vision and the mission of the particular business, the values that you have, the core values, the ones that you want to prosper and to promote throughout your entire business. your social responsibility strategy that you may have, the executives on the team, the board of directors, and the advisors that you have on the team. And this is the only opportunity that you have within the plan to really talk about the dolphins, or how much you love the industry, or how much you love the business, or the passion that you have for your customers, or the passion that you have for solving the problem. This is a chance where you get to go to your heart a little bit and talk about why you are doing this business and the passion you have for being successful and supporting your clients. What investors really want to see is not only that you have a heart here, but they also want to see that you have the A-team in place. And this is the old A-team, not the new one from the old movie. This is the old one with George Prepard and Mr. T and some of the old ones. They want to see that you've got an A-team in place. In fact, for many investors, the team is the number one thing. They'll skim the executive summary a little bit. They'll take a look at the financial projections, and they'll go right to the team to find out who it is that you are proposing to work with in order to create this business. So it's very important for you to talk well about your team in this section on the company and team. In the next section, we talk about the progress, the milestones that you've hit so far, the major achievements and accomplishments that you've had so far along the way, and especially any market traction that you have. One of the big questions that you get from investors all the time is, how much have you sold? If you ever watched the TV show The Shark Tank, which I enjoy watching, one of the favorite questions that those sharks always ask the people who are up in front of them is, how much have you sold? What were your revenues last year? What were your profits last year? Because market traction significantly reduces risk. So if you've got progress, this is the place to say it. This is the place to toot your own horn and talk about the many satisfied customers that you've got, and especially if you can demonstrate an increasing trend towards customer interaction and revenues and profits. That's what they really want to see. And in the next section, we talk about our growth strategy. Once we've talked about, here's the team that's in place and here's the progress we've made so far, we talk about the phases of growth, or the ways in which we intend to grow the business over time. This is where you would relate a product development plan, your marketing plan, your sales plan, and your staffing plan. So this is the place where we think it through. In phase 1 of our growth, we're going to introduce this product and we're going to sell this much. In phase 2 of the growth, we're going to open up new markets. We're going to introduce new products. We're going to hire new people, etc. In phase 3, this is what we intend to do. This is the place where we comment on and reflect and communicate the status of our strategic plan. The project plan by which we intend to grow the business goes in the growth strategy section. In the next section is the financial history and projections. If you have a business that has been in operation for any length of time at all, you have some financial history. And especially if you're raising capital, you are in effect selling a piece of the asset. And with your financial history, which is typically year-to-date P&L and current balance sheet, this is where you tell the potential investor or founder or partner in some way what they're buying into, what the financial history, what assets the company has. If you are a brand new startup company with no financial history, you can get away without having current financial statements here, but generally it's a pretty good idea to have them. Then we come into the financial projections, which is how much money you intend to make, how much revenues you intend to have, and and how much of that you intend to keep in profits, of course. Then you talk about your capital strategy, how much funding you're going to need and how you intend to gain that funding for your company, your risk and your mitigation of risk, what are the major risk components you see and how you intend to address them, and the investor exit strategy, and your exit strategy if you have one, but certainly the investor exit strategy. And when it comes to financial projections, I'm a big fan of all 3 of the major statements, the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement, month by month for the first year and annual for the first 3 to 5 years. And I did an office hours presentation 4 or 5 of them ago on the art and science of doing financial projections. I encourage you to look in the library and listen to that recording if you have any questions at all about the financial projections themselves. And the last section of the business plan is the appendices. And this is where all the supporting detail goes in, your detailed resume, your supporting detail about any product development plans, any graphs and charts and diagrams about how you intend to grow the business or build your products, any orders that you have or letters of intent that you have, any awards and certifications, notices like a patent or an award of a trademark would be a good thing to scan and put in the appendice of a plan. And then the financial notes and assumptions, that which describes the financial projections, which will come as typically the last section in the appendix to the plan. So those are the 8 sections of a common business plan: the executive summary, the opportunity or the market and the industry, your solution, how you intend to address the opportunities that you see in the marketplace, your company and team, the progress that you've made so far, the growth strategy, the way in which you intend to grow the business, your financial projections, and the appendices. And here's some tips for those of you who are thinking about creating your own business plan. My number 1 tip that you'll hear me say a lot is that you as a business owner need to own every word and every number in your plan. Even if you get somebody to help you write the plan, you need to own every word and every number in the plan, because your investors, your founders, your other people who may read the plan will expect you to own every word and every number in the plan. Even if you have somebody create or assist with the writing of the plan or the financial projections, again, you need to know where every single number that came from, what all of your financial assumptions were, how you came up with the numbers that you came up with, how you came up with the salaries, the marketing budgets, the board of directors budgets, the insurance budgets, anything that's in that plan. You got to own every word and every number in the plan. I encourage you to read several plans as you're creating your plan so you can see what a quality business plan looks like. It's very difficult for you to create a quality plan if you've never seen a quality plan. So I encourage you to ask for samples from anybody that would help you create a plan. Or if you know somebody in business, better yet, who's been successful raising capital or building a business, you might ask them for a copy of their business plan and see what it looks like, so you can see what a good quality one looks like. And then I encourage you to get a business plan team in place. Get people on your team to help with market research and the positioning in the marketplace, with your growth strategies and your financial projections. Get somebody on your team who can help you edit and proofread the plan and polish it and publish it so that you can put your best foot forward, so that it is a great reflection on what your definition of quality is. And the process that I use whenever I create business plans that I normally recommend to others is first we gather a lot of data about the current status of the business, and do our industry research, our competitive research, etc. Then we develop our growth strategies. How are we going to get from point A to point B? And then develop the financial model that reflects those growth strategies. And then almost always we adjust the growth strategies based upon the results of the financial model. Once we find out where the low-hanging fruit is, where the biggest business opportunities are, and where the least risk is, typically we adjust the growth strategy based upon the financial modeling process. And then you write the plan. So here's your homework and your exercises. First of all, think about the value of a business plan for your business. If you're raising capital, it's essential. If you're going for funding from a bank or some other lender, it's essential, although it doesn't have to be nearly as complex as the ones in which you would use to raise capital. And it may be just that it facilitates the thinking it through and the creating of a good business model for you. It gives you the opportunity to think about your market, to think about your industry, to think about your competition, to think about good growth strategies, to think about how you're going to make your money and how much money that you would like to make. It really does facilitate the thinking it through. Decide whether or not you're going to create a formal business plan on your own or whether you want to do it with professional support. I guarantee you that the last few business plans that I wrote were a lot better than the first few business plans that I wrote. It is a learned skill to develop a business plan. I often say it's like that master's thesis or that extremely important term paper that you have in college. My suggestion is that you get support writing it if you have a lot riding on it, if it's really that important to you. And then I suggest you just go for it. If you haven't written a business plan in a while, or your business plan is out of date, then I encourage you to do that because of the value that it can bring to you in the thinking of it through. So that's our presentation for today. In just a minute, we're going to open it up for questions and answers. hopefully comments and questions on the topic of the day, and then any other issues that you might see. And I also encourage you to type into the chat box or into the question box a little bit on what your biggest takeaways were or your insights that you gained from this presentation. That helps me when I serve to help other people. And tell me what you're going to do and what you're going to focus on when it comes to writing your own business plan. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about the programs that I have. I offer 3 different types of programs: coaching and consulting services. I have my library and membership program and my Beyond Business Survival CEO training program. With regards to consulting and coaching services, I'm immediately available for private mentoring, strategic plans, business plans, and financial models. In 3 weeks, I'll be headed back to the CEO Space Business Growth Conference for like the 48th time. And there's still time to create a complete business plan or to get a lot of work done in between now and the time that that conference comes about. So if you're thinking about going to that, give me a call right away. I'd love to support you in your preparation for that business growth conference. My programs for coaching and consulting services really start at a very low cost of entry here, as little as $200. I also have my library program. My office hours library has all of our office hours recordings, the dozens of business documents, templates, spreadsheets, processes, agreement, etc. that you can find valuable as you grow your business, some bonus inspirational messages, and I'm adding to it every single week. There are 3 pricing options for the library. You can get a lifetime membership for $279, an annual membership for $79, or a monthly membership for the whopping $9.38. That's right, you can listen to all 24 or 25 office hours presentations that are behind the curtain for $9.38. You could listen to one a day for the next 25 days for an extremely low price. But I certainly would encourage you to continue to sign up for the membership because we do add to it all the time. I also encourage you to consider my Beyond Business Survival CEO training program. It is that critical small business owner training that you need. It's what you need to know when you're the CEO. Because if you don't get the training that you need in fundamentals of business, in those business success principles, you're bound to make a lot of critical mistakes that will slow you down or shut you down. So I'm convinced that this program will save you $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 or more. It is a self-paced, on-demand learning program that you can go through as often as you like. It's audio with complete transcripts and dozens of critical success principles. It's only $497, and if you purchase today, it includes the bonus of a lifetime membership into my Paul Hoyt library. So if you haven't taken a look at the Beyond Business Survival program, I strongly encourage you to do so. If you've listened to my Business Survival Boot Camp, that is, in essence, just a fraction of the great advice, the great wisdom, and the success principles that you'll find in the Beyond Business Survival program. I invite you to join me on Facebook, sign into my Facebook, or become a friend with me on Facebook, or like my fan page, which we're going to be bringing up here in the next day or two, so that you can be sure to get your Energy of the Day message. Every day for the last 60 days, and I think for the next 5 years, I publish a little inspirational message that I hopefully will support you and encourage you in your journey. Next Monday, we're going to talk about micro-business challenges. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the 4 challenges of business, which were focused on small businesses in general. But next week, we're going to talk about the challenges that are faced by micro businesses. And I define a micro business as a business with less than 10 employees in the front office. Did you know that 80 or 85% of all the businesses in the United States have 5 or fewer employees? That's right, 5 or fewer employees. So next week, we're going to talk about challenges that are specific to those very, very small businesses and give you some tips and techniques on being able to address those challenges. But let me know what topics that you would like for me to address. Go to paulssurvey.com and let me know what topics you'd like for me to address on the office hours. We're going to continue doing this for a long time. And of course, always do your homework. Now we're going to open it up for questions and answers, comments and questions on the topic of the day, any other issues that you might have. If you've got some takeaways or some insights that you gained today, please share those with us as well. Here's the links for paulssurvey.com and for my personal contact information, the email and the telephone number. And if you'd like to schedule a 15 or a 30-minute session, just go to schedulepaul.com and pick a time that works for you. I'd love to have the opportunity to talk with you. With that said, I'm going to open it up for questions. Audra, did we have any questions today?
We certainly do, Paul.
Okay.
So what is a typical time investment needed to do this for a coaching and consulting practice? Is this level of detail necessary if you have no intention to raise capital from an outside source?
I think it's always important for you to think things through. So as we talked about the plans behind the plan, and you can download this presentation when I get it up by close of business tomorrow. When we talked about the plans behind the plans, I always think that you should think through the overall business. I'm a big fan of 90-day growth plans, but I'm also a big fan of spending an hour or two every once in a while on a longer-term strategic plan. What is the market? What is your unique selling proposition? What are your differentiators? What do you really need to be good at? What's your business complexity profile, your business activity profile, your business foundation profile? So I'm a big fan of thinking it through, even if you have a fairly small business. You may not need to invest the time and the money in formalizing that in terms of a business plan that's, a 30 or a 35-page document. You may not need to have detailed financial projections, but I am a big fan of thinking it through. And I've got several programs that help small business owners with the thinking it through process. My small business success package is my flagship product, usually my first point of entry when I work with customers, and that's 4 90-minute sessions to do just that, to think through the long term, to think through the short term, to create the budget around that, and to assess where you are in your business and what you might want to focus on as you grow your business over the next 3 to 6 months. So I am a big fan of planning, but not necessarily a big fan of spending the time necessary to create a formal business plan document if you don't have to. There are other things that are more important to that. That is, how you intend to make money and what you intend to do over the next 90 days to grow your business. So thanks for that question. Next question.
So this was not set up, I swear. This is Richard asking. He says, would you agree that investing in a formal professionally assisted business plan before diving into, let's say, a sole proprietorship is a critical sanity check? And the follow-on is, have you ever done business plans for clients who then used the plan to discover that they would not be successful? In other words, a quality business plan saves somebody from a fiasco.
Yes and no. So I'm going to answer the first question was around creating a quality business plan for a sole proprietorship. I think it really depends. The first question was on a coaching business. Coaching business is a pretty simple business. It's not as simple as selling hot dogs at a hot dog stand or selling roses at the street corner, but on a scale of 10 to 60, which is what my business complexity profile scale normally runs at. It's right in the middle. It's a 30. It's a 29, I believe it is. That's not an incredibly complex business, and frankly, the challenges of being a coach, it's all about sales and delivery. It's all about marketing and selling your coaching services, and then it's about delivering a high quality service. I think you could create a strategic plan to grow your coaching business in an hour or so. I think you could create a 90-day plan and a financial model in another few hours, and I've helped a lot of people who had very simple businesses create quality plans with the small business success package, which is much less complex, costs a lot less money, takes a lot less time than does a formal business plan. So I do not believe that every business needs a formal business plan. I do believe, as I said earlier, that every business can benefit from thinking it through, by thinking through your marketing plan and your sales plan. And if the right way to do that for you is to write that formal business plan document, because that's the way you gain clarity on what your plans are, then by all means do it. And Audrey, would you kind of remind me what the second half of that question was, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. Have you ever done business plans for clients who then use the plan to discover that they would not be successful? In other words, The quality business plan saved them from a fiasco.
Yeah, absolutely. But usually what happens, I don't know that I've ever had a business owner retreat completely and just say, well, shoot, if I can't do it the way that I thought that I wanted to do it, then I'm not going to do it at all. What usually happens is that we pivot. In lean startup terminology, we make a change. We realize that that the way that they had intended to go to market might not work. It typically, by the way, happens at the financial modeling process. We run through the financial modeling process and find out that you just can't, you can't buy something for $1, sell it for $1.05 and create a business. You have to have significantly more margins than that. So generally speaking, the business plan process, and especially the financial modeling process, exposes a weakness in the business model, which we then change, and then they go about creating a business based upon a stronger plan or a better foundation. What I have found most often, though, is somebody who comes to me and says, I've been in business for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, and I'm just not making any money. I'm struggling like crazy. I need a business plan and I'm going to raise capital because I need to take my business to the next level. And in the course of creating the strategy and creating the financial model for those businesses, we find out why they've been struggling. And it usually has to do with poor margins. It usually has to do with either not very good marketing expertise, not very good sales expertise, or extremely poor margins, one of those three things. And that's discovered during the consulting process. And again, we make a pivot, we change, and adjust the business model, adjust the go-to-market strategy so that they can have a decent chance of success and getting to be financially stable. So thank you for that question. Next question, Audra.
So how much does it cost to get a business plan written?
There are a lot of different strategies for writing a business plan. If you write it your own, you can get some really good quality tools out there. Palo Alto Software has one. There's a few other ones that they have some online tools and some tools that you would download onto your PC. Gion Software has one, Business Plan Builder, I think it is, and then there's Business Plan Pro, and there's a few of them out there. So, from that cost point of view, you can spend $100 or a few $100 in a tool that helps you write your own business plan, and you can get it done for, a few $100. On the other end of the spectrum, I've seen people charge $15,000 or $25,000 for writing a business plan. My business plan fees are in the middle of that. They're many thousands of dollars, but they're not in the $15,000 to $25,000 range to help somebody. And I always use, by the way, a co-authored business plan approach, which means that I work with you to help write the business plan. Part of my process is that you fill out the questionnaire because I want as many of your words as possible to put into the business plan. Then we work together to develop the strategy, and we work together to do the financial model, and then we work together to revise the plan. So my favorite process for creating a plan is to do a co-authored business plan, and that's many thousands of dollars, but it's not in the $15,000 to $25,000 range. I hope that helps. Next, Audra.
How long does it usually take?
I've had people come to me and say, I started writing my business plan 6 months ago and I haven't completed it yet. So if you're writing it on your own and you're being very challenged with it, it can take you a long time to get that business plan done. When people work with me, I generally say 3 to 4 weeks. It takes you some amount of time to fill out the questionnaire. It takes us some amount of time to work together to develop the strategic plan and the financial model. It takes me a week or so to write the first draft of the plan. 25 or 30 hours of my time goes into the first draft of the plan. And it depends on what my schedule is. But if I didn't have anything on my schedule, you could get it one in 3 to 4 weeks. So that means, by the way, right now there's time to get a complete business plan done before the CEO Space Business Growth Conference. That starts in 3 weeks. I have done them in as quick as 2 weeks, but I think you get a higher quality result if you plan for it to be a 3 or a 4 week process. Thanks for the question. Next, Audra.
This kind of circles back a little bit based on the previous conversation.
Okay.
So even if I feel that I don't need a formal business plan, you're suggesting I should still go through the strategic planning process, sort of as if I were going to pull a business plan together and get like a 90-day strategy, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in the small business success package I have, I have 8 or 9 tools that we can select from. Usually the last 2 are the financial model, really brief kind of a budget, and the 90-day growth plan. But the first 2 are typically an assessment of where you are, a business foundation profile. And usually the first one that we talk about, if you haven't done the strategic planning process already, it's spending an hour and a half doing a little bit of work on the strategy. What do you want to do in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of your growth? What are your long-term plans are denoted in my business clarity questionnaire, which I'm happy to share with you. But then we refine that a little bit. If we have a pretty good idea of where you want to be in 3 to 5 years, a really good next step is to break that down into significant milestones, significant phases of growth, and figure out where you want to be in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So I'm a big fan of spending an hour and a half or so on strategy, even for the smallest business, every once in a while, which means once a year or once every 6 months or so, and then once every 90 days, doing a 90-day growth plan. So redo your strategy whenever it becomes apparent that you need to redo the strategy. If there's been a significant change in your competitive positioning, a significant change in your results, that you're not getting the results that you want, or you're getting phenomenal results, that's always a good time to adjust your strategy as well, or every year, whichever comes first. That being said, that if you've got a larger business, if you've got a business that has a core executive team of 8 or 10 people, or if your business is a larger business, a $5 million, $10 million, $20 million a year business, then I think a totally different kind of strategic planning process is called for. Once a year, at least, I would encourage you to take you and your executives off-site for a couple of days and go through a much more formal, much more robust strategic planning engagement, which I've done 75 or 80 of those as well, and I really enjoy doing those longer, more robust strategic planning engagements. So it depends on where you are. Very simple businesses, you can get by with an hour and a half on strategy every once in a while. Much larger businesses, you probably ought to go off-site once a year with the complete executive team for 2 or 3 days and think through everything that needs to be thought through and discuss everything that needs to be discussed so that you and your team can be on the same page for the next year and grow the business the way that you've agreed to grow the business. Thank you for that question. Next question, Audra.
So if you have helped with plans for businesses outside of the United States, have you seen any significant difference between the U.S. plan and one somewhere like Canada, or maybe as far away as New Zealand?
I've done quite a few plans for people in Canada, and usually those people were raising capital, in the United States. So the big challenges or the big differences have to do with the taxation strategy, because the taxing profile in Canada is a lot different than it is in the United States. So I always want to work with somebody who understands what that is, because it can have a significant impact on your cash flow. The value-added taxes that they have in Canada are different than the sales taxes that they have here. So, there's some differences when it comes to the financial modeling section of it. We used to work for a company that had a parent company that was in the United Kingdom. And what we found out when I worked for that company was the formation of the financial statements themselves were much different. So, if you're doing a business plan with financial projections for a company that's based in the United Kingdom, it's a different type of financial model. And goodness gracious, that was 40 years ago that I worked for that company. So frankly, the only thing I remember is that the financial models are different, that the financial statements are different. I don't remember in which way they are different. So I don't know what it is for New Zealand or Australia, whether it's the Canadian model, which more closely resembles the American model, or whether it's based on the United Kingdom, which has a different format for financial statements. So we could do a lot of things, but we'd have to get some outside expertise in when it came to doing the financial projections, so that that aspect of the business plan was in the right language. Thanks for that question. And by the way, I'd be happy to travel to New Zealand to do a strategic planning session. I think that would be a lot of fun. Next question, Audra.
So do you develop the type of strategic plan where you want most of the operation to be automated, so the CEO works on the business and does not spend so much time working in the business?
You bet, and that really depends on the size of business. In some businesses, you know, it's about working in the business 90% of the time and working on the business 10% of the time. I admire and respect the solopreneur or the small business owner that has one or two people working with them. In fact, as I said earlier, the next week's presentation is going to be on the micro businesses. I respect micro businesses. I understand what it's like to be an owner-operator. I have a micro business. I know there's some cool people who have micro businesses. So, you know, I'm a big fan of the micro business as well. But for larger businesses, you know, it's real important for the CEO to shift their mindset from working in the business to managing other people first. I mean, it's a hierarchy. The first hierarchy is I work in the business only. The next level up, I'm an owner-operator, but I also work on the business. The next level up is as a manager, is that I achieve greatness through the efforts of others. The next level up is the entrepreneur, who may want to work only 1 day or 2 days in the business, but has systems in place and managers in place so that they don't actually have to work in the business, or in some cases even on the business. And so it's a hierarchy depending upon what's right for you and in your particular business. So many times the larger plans, it's all about the CEO, or the person that I'm engaging with, the owner, really playing the role of the CEO. And they don't actually do any of the work. They don't deliver the work product. They don't deliver customer service. They don't, you know, they don't process the books, and they don't develop the marketing plans. They sell, but only to the largest partners and the largest customers. You know, their job is as a true CEO. It's working on the business, you know, 90% of the time. Next question, Audra.
So what's the difference between a business plan and an exit strategy?
An exit strategy to me is a part of a business plan. In fact, the exit strategy is one small part of the financial section of a business plan. And as I talked about during the body of the presentation, there are two different types of exit strategies. One of them is your personal exit strategy. How do you intend to leave the business, if ever? And the other one is your investor exit strategy. How do you intend to give your investor a return on their investment? And those are two different types of exit strategies. So in my way of using those terms, the exit strategy is a strategy. It's typically a part of the business plan, a part of the overall business plan. And by the way, in business, what I find is, you know, there's no governing body out there that says that here's the way we're going to use these terms. So what I find is that we each get the opportunity to define the terms for ourselves. So when I use the term business plan, I mean a formal document. But other people, when they use the term business plan, what they're really referring to is what's your business model, or what's your strategic plan? How do you intend to make money? They're thinking of a more informal, think it through process than when I use that term. So unfortunately in business, and unfortunately as a business consultant, there is no governing body that says this is the way you're going to use the term business plan. This is the way you're going to use the term vision. This is the way you're going to use the term mission. There are a lot of different terms that we use as if we all have the same definition for those terms, and it's not true. You know, words are labels on concepts, and it's up to you and I when we communicate with each other to make sure that the words that we're using are referring to exactly the same concepts. Thanks. Next question, Audra.
How important is having a team in place before going for funding?
Critical. Absolutely critical. I've seen I've seen a few people fail to raise any money at all, even though they tried, and usually the reason they did that was because they didn't have a team in place. My experience is the investors will review the executive summary to see whether or not it's an industry or a business that they're interested in looking into for any further at all, then flip to the financial section of business plan to decide whether or not they're interested in the size of business that you intend to create. If you're out raising $1 million and you say that, my business is going to have $1 million in revenue and, $70,000 in net profit in year 3, I can guarantee you that no sane investor is at all interested in putting any money into that, because there's no way they're ever going to get a return on their investment. You're just not doing that the way that it needs to be done. And then the third thing is typically turning to the team. Who's going to do this? Have they worked together before? Do they have any relevant experience? Can they in fact execute the plans that they're sharing with us in the context of the business plan? So it's usually those 3 steps to me. It's the executive summary, then the financial projections that they look at, and then the team to decide whether or not they really believe that you have an opportunity to realize the plan that you're putting in front of them. So I think it's very, very important. And I always recommend, ideally you would have the top 3 or 4 executives defined, the CEO and the chief marketing officer, the chief sales officer, maybe the COO and the CFO, 4 or 5 executives defined. Ideally you would have 3 or 4 members of your board of directors defined if you're a C corporation, or your board of managers if you're an LLC. And ideally you would have 8 to 10 advisors. So I like that section of the plan to be 2 or 3 pages long. When you only see one name there and one picture and one brief bio, it really lets the antenna start to buzzing. The alarm bells start ringing in the minds of a sophisticated investor. And the alarm bell is, what happens to this person? If this gal or this guy decides to do something else, gets hit by a bus, gets sick in some way, then there goes my investment. So that's one of the reasons they really want to see a team in place, is to minimize their risk. If something happens to the key people, they want to know that there's other people in the business, invested in the business, who can take over in their absence, whether it be temporary or permanent. Next question, Audra. And we have 12:56. We got an opportunity for another couple of questions before we call it a session for today. So next question, Audra.
So this one's very quick. Okay. Where do I find some samples of what you consider great plans?
Send me an email. Send me an email to paul@paulhoyt.com. I normally, by the way, don't give out samples of business plans until we are, well along in the process of whether or not whether or not you might engage my services. And the reason I don't is because I like to send you a business plan that is a real-life business plan. I don't like to send sample business plans out that have been redacted to where you can't really tell what the business is or who it is or anything like that. And because of that, I like to get permission from the people that I've written business plans for to share their business plans with a few limited folks who may want to see a sample of a business plan that I have created. So while I do offer samples, I normally don't give those out until we're pretty far along in the process of deciding whether or not we want to work together to create a business plan. That being said, you can go online and type into a Google search bar or a Yahoo search or a Bing search, whichever search engine you use, and say sample business plans and get dozens and dozens and dozens of them. So I usually reserve my samples for those people who may want to engage my services to write a business plan so that they can see what the business plan will look like when I create one for them. Next question, Audra.
If I write a plan, will I get funded?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a great question. Depends on you, depends upon your business model, depends upon whether or not you do the work necessary to get funded. if you could write the best business plan in the world, and if it just sat on your desk and you never shared it with anybody, you never made the phone calls, never made the capital presentations, never built out your capital team, never went for it, you're not going to get funded. And as I said earlier, I've seen one or two people who had what I consider to be a decent business plan who did not get any funding at all because they had a weakness in the plan. And most oftentimes the weakness in the plan is a lack of team. So there are no guarantees that if you get a quality plan that you will get funded with that plan. Because if you got holes in your plan, like you're not planning to make enough money, or you've got a hole in the plan in terms of the team that's there, or a perceived weakness in really understanding the marketplace, you can have what you think is a high quality plan, but which your investor thinks is a weak plan because of one reason or the other. And then, of course, raising capital, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. That's my experience. My experience in general is to have a great idea is 1% of the solution, to have a great plan is a 2% of the solution, and to actually execute the plan, to implement the plan, to raise the capital, and then to build the business is 97% of the work. So, so you got to do the work, and that's the bottom line. As you, as a business owner, the number one business success principle is you have to take 100% responsibility for everything that goes on at your business, and you have to make sure that the job gets done, and that's up to you. So you have a better chance of raising capital with a high-quality business plan, but it is not a guarantee, unfortunately. I get 12:59. Audra, do you have one or two zinger last questions for us today?
We actually do have two very good questions. So
Great.
The first group, if I can't afford a team, should I offer equity for services? And if so, how much should I offer? Should I make a performance matrix so they can earn it, or what?
Wow, that's a longer, I'm going to defer the answer to that. And I'm happy to talk to you about that, by the way. You're welcome to schedule a time for us to have a 15-minute conversation about that. I'm happy to schedule that with you offline. But yeah, that's what people do. When you don't have a team, you look for people who are willing to do sweat equity, or even better, people who are willing to bring in their own money and will also work in the business for free to have a founding position in the business. The other option, by the way, is to raise that initial seed capital with a convertible promissory note of sorts or some other instrument. Go out and raise the capital necessary to get that team in place so that you can afford to hire people who can't afford to work for free for some period of time. So there are a lot of different strategies of what to do when you don't have any money with regards to getting your team in place. In fact, I did an office hours presentation. I think it was my most popular one of all. I think it was number 3 that I did, was on what to do when you have no money. So you might join up with the library and go back and review that office hours presentation, which would tell you, even more than how do you get a team when you don't have any money, but what to do in general when you don't have any money. And that last question, Audra?
So I think you kind of answered it, but I'm going to let you finish.
Okay.
Joey's asking, how do you create a capital team?
I don't know if I answered that or not. When I wrote a book called The Capital Coaching Program that I published a few years ago, and one of the chapters in that book was dedicated towards getting a capital team. So by definition, by my definition, by the way, a capital team is anybody that helps you raise capital. So that could be people who will give you money themselves, then be an investor in your company. It could be people who will introduce you to people you can have a conversation with about the opportunity to invest in your company. It can be members of your capital team. The way that you get one is you ask. I'm looking for people who will help me raise capital for my business. Will you be a member of my capital team? And here's what I expect. What I'd really like for you to do is give me a couple of introductions a month, or a couple of introductions a week, or I'd just like to have the opportunity to have a conversation with you about who you know so that we can explore together the people that you might introduce me to who may be interested in investing in my business. So recruiting a capital team and managing a capital team is a fairly long conversation. And like I say, it was a chapter in my book, The Capital Coaching Program. But I'm glad that you're asking the question, because nobody raises capital by themselves. You always raise capital through the efforts of others. First you go to all of the people that you know personally, and then you go to the people that they know, and hopefully you can raise capital within 1 or 2 handshakes of the people who know you personally, because the greater the degrees of separation between you and your potential investor, the less likely they are to really care about you personally, and the more likely they are to just be a very sophisticated investor that is very objective and only interested in the outcome of the project. They may not care about you or care about the dolphins at all. They just care about the outcome. I want to thank you for all of your great questions today. This business plan speech that I prepared today, by the way, is a subset of the ones that I'll be giving at the CEO Space Business Growth Conference in 3 weeks. So the topics today was about 20 minutes, 25 minutes in length. I gave a 75-minute presentation on the art and science of writing business plans at the CEO Space Business Growth Conference. So if you enjoyed this presentation, you'll enjoy the longer one as well, and certainly recommend to any of your family and friends who might be going to the conference to drop in and listen to one of my presentations. I'd be honored to do that. Next week's presentation will be on micro-business strategies, what to do when you're a really tiny small business like mine. You know, what are the common challenges that you face, and what are the ways in which you can overcome those obstacles, face those challenges, etc. Until next week, be sure to go to paulsurvey.com. Be sure to think about what a business plan can do for your business. If there's a way that I can support you in preparation for the conference that's coming up in 3 weeks, I'd love to have the opportunity to do that. Give me a call at 415-997-8001. Send me an email to paul@paulhoyt.com, or go to schedulepaul.com and pick a time that works best for you on your calendar so we can have a conversation. Thanks again for attending today. Until I see you again, this is Paul Hoyt wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected. Goodbye.